Welcome back. Now let's head to South Africa, where the government is looking at a number of policy interventions to cut down on the environmental impact of plastics. The Department of Environmental Affairs is looking at amending the current policies and introducing legislation around plastic shopping bags and curbing single-use plastics. Now, in response, a number of South Africa's biggest shopping malls said they will be adopting a no plastic shopping bags policy across its malls. A plastic bag levy was also introduced in June 2004 at a rate of 3 cents a bag on some types of plastic shopping bags. The levy was increased since then to 12 cents a bag from 1st April 2018, with the aim, of course, of reducing litter and encouraging its reuse. Well, let's delve further into plastic pollution in Africa. We're now joined by Jane Snow. She is the founder and the CEO of Aqua Vita Kenya. It is a company that helps major companies go green. Great to have you in the studio.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
With us, Jane. Well, let's start off with plastic pollution, the scale of the problem on the continent. It's actually a huge climate issue. According to the stats, carbon dioxide emissions from ethylene production are projected to expand by about 34% between 2015 and 2030. So what is the scale of the problem, especially here on the African continent?
So thanks for having me. I think we can't really think of pollution just really on the continent. The concept of plastic pollution is a global one, just as it affects the general climate. So just to get some numbers on the table, as a globe, we produce about 500 million tons a year of plastic. Now, 42% of that is packaging. That would be classified under some of the single-use plastic, a lot of the packaging that we typically have disposed of. 20% of it goes into what typically is classified as industrial usage, such as manufacturing and so forth. Mm-hmm. And the rest ultimately goes into what would be called utility plastic. Now, the real concern is the 42%, right? So if we continue as a globe at 500 million tons a year, in about 10 years, we potentially could have about 7 billion tons of plastic. Mm-hmm. The numbers are not as understood on the continent, right? But when you think about it, right, we still do have a lot of manufacturing activities. We are we're big users in particularly plastic bags. Right. As you've indicated, I think there's several countries across the continent that are taking an initiative to really start laying out policies. But these are all really small actions.
Well, before you delve into that, it's interesting you mentioned that, because Africa seems to be at the forefront of banning the use of single-use plastic. On the continent, Kenya's done it, countries like Cote d'Ivoire have done it. Rwanda. South Africa's making an effort. According to some stats, out of 127 countries worldwide, 34 African nations have instituted some sort of legislation. So is it actually helping us with the issue? And do you agree that Africa is doing a good job?
I think Africa is taking some great steps. Now, I hate to say it, but we're coming a little bit late to the party. When you look at other countries, of course, the developed countries such as the United States, the UK, they've already imposed not necessarily bans actually, but more of a tax. So instead of if you choose to use a plastic bag, you're going to pay an extra 10 cents or you're going to pay an extra 20 cents. So you have an option to take a paper bag instead of a plastic bag. So they're basically letting the consumer make a choice. I think the actions that Kenya has taken, Rwanda has taken, Cote d'Ivoire has taken are steps in the right direction, and they're absolutely helping. I mean, when I fly into Jomo Kenyatta International Airport versus when I fly into Entebbe versus when I fly into Dar es Salaam, I pretty much can feel the difference. That I know I can't bring a plastic bag, and everybody on the flight to JKIA cannot bring a plastic bag. It's a really great step in the right direction. I totally agree. Beyond the pollution, I mean, when you look at our infrastructure, there's been a lot of compromise that has been caused by those single-use plastic bags as well as bottles. But I think we need to even do more. And really, I think as governments, they need to think about policies that are a little bit broader than just really focusing on small items, such as creating incentives for recycling policies within organizations, within the domestic environment, that, you know, when someone comes to pick up your bag, your trash, they also have an alternative to put the plastic containers and plastic bags, so that we really can separate those two, and then we can then focus on some recycling activities.
Now, your company is actually helping major firms across Africa to reduce their plastic footprint. Give us a sense of what your experience has been. Have you seen a will to change? Tell us.
That's a really great question. So Aquavita really is really being a catalyst for us to begin thinking about, before we even wait for governments to take action, right? How can corporations, and now corporations are a really great partner because they employ a ton of people. So when you take a policy of removing plastic within a corporation, you notice that employees often bring that to their homes as well. They begin to get that mindset that we have to take care of our environment. Organizations across here in Kenya, where we've been for 5 years, have been totally progressive. We have about 5 large banks, insurance companies, and as you know, several companies have pledged to the SDGs, those are Sustainable Development Goals by the UN, and part of that is really activities that are surrounding climate change, and removing plastic from the workplace is really a great place, not only for the workplace, but to get employees to begin to think about the environment, and when they see that there's no plastic in the office, then we can consider taking plastic out of our homes as well.
Now, currently, countries like Kenya are employing quite punitive measures. I mean, you can get jail time if you're found with plastic. Do you think that is the way forward? What more do you think governments need to do to ensure that both companies and individuals are really taking this serious?
Yeah, so I looked at the punitive sort of process in Kenya, and I think it's quite aggressive. But truth of the matter, I think it's working, but I think beyond the punitive, you want individuals to feel engaged, right? To really be making the choice instead of feeling like you're going to get punished and that's why you're not doing something. So I think policies that reward, right, particularly that reward organizations and institutions that practice sort of non-pollutive practices, such as removing plastics or really just managing their waste. You know, manufacturing facilities are places that, you know, there's a lot of potential pollution that's going there. Reward organizations that are really taking care of minimizing the amount of pollution, or what the rest of the world is trying to do now is to basically offset your carbon footprint. So you might have to still participate in carbon producing or carbon dioxide producing activities, but then you can then on the other end take actions that basically offset that carbon footprint. So rewarding those, I think, typically works better than punishment.
Right. Well, we certainly hope Africa will begin to pick up some of those. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
It was my
Of course,
pleasure.
that was Jane Snow. She's the founder and CEO of Aquavita Kenya.